tattoos already too, you know. So looking at me, you know, be
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there's that. I don't know. That's San Diego. That's the start. So that was already a touch of Ed Hardy though too. Like Ed Hardy was already in my thing. Zeke Owens was already in my thing. Yeah, I had been tattooed by Erno because if you go back to San Francisco, when I hitchhiked to San Francisco when I was a kid looking to get an apprenticeship from Lyle Tuttle, because Mel the Head told me that Lyle Tuttle would apprentice me. He was like, you'll definitely get an apprenticeship if you show up. So I was like, all right.
So tell us about that.
I mean, you know, it was pretty simple. It was like, I wanted to get the fuck out of Detroit because I hated it there with a super deep passion, you know, just being just in the thick of the whole world of racism and all that stuff is just like, just a constant thing, you know. I wanted out. So,
right.
Yeah. Lucky I could get out. So I left, you know. And I hitchhiked to, and you know, plus my home life was just crazy. So, and then I hitchhiked to California. I made it here. I'd been here before. My dad lived here, so I'd been here before. So I knew what California was.
Okay.
And I wanted back. You know, I wanted more. I wanted more of California. You know.
Uh-huh.
And so I came here, and I got here, and San Francisco was the first, you know, big city I got to, and I went to get my apprenticeship. So I went and started to make my, you know, self known and be there and hang out. And I was hanging out in the punk scene. That's when I met, you know, Greg Irons and all that stuff, and a few other people. And the people that worked at Lyle Tuttle's were super cool. Erno worked there, and he was just getting his tattoos from Ed Hardy, which were like, you know, mind blowing, you know, for sure. And there was another guy that I don't remember his name. He was like a super hippie dude that was like really cool, and he kind of reminded me of Steve Smith in a way, you know. Or I guess that's Steve Smith reminded me of him. I guess I'm
right.
Flip-flopping the timeline. But yeah, let's see. And then Lyle Tuttle was like amazing. You know, he was just like a dynamo. You know,
right.
He wasn't really tattooing at that time. You know, but he would come in and be like super dynamic. You know, he's all cranked out and just like going. You know,
right.
And he was young. You know, I mean, that was
right.
like a long time
but
ago.
He was already kind of worldly.
He was super worldly. I mean, he was worldly from the 70s. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
You know, I mean, this is like the 80s, which is not that far away, you know what I mean? Like, if you think about it, but, you know, it is still.
Right.
I mean, yeah. When I think about being tattooing for as long as I have, it's mind-fucking-blowing, dude. Yeah, because I could have just started, like, last week. No, maybe, like, a year ago or something. Yeah, could be, like, a year ago.
So tell us how you approached Lyall.
I was just like, well, I was getting friendly with Erno. Erno was super nice. Erno was super cool, and he knew I was like a runaway. You know, there was like a season for runaways in San Francisco. So, like, you know, I was not original in the fact that I was like a runaway, basically, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I was probably original in the fact that the amount of stuff that I had seen as a kid, you know, and, you know, there's probably some parts of my story that's original or whatever, and whatever connected with Erno or, yeah, he was super nice to me. He didn't tattoo me or anything, you know, he wouldn't do that. But he was super nice, and I hung out there all the time, and I would sweep the floors and clean the flash and just be like, you know, whatever you need. I mean, I'm there. I want to hang out, so, like, of course, you know, give me something to do, you know. I mean, you're all doing things, so, like, let me do something, you know.
Huh.
I never asked to draw or anything like that. You know, if I go back in time, man, I would fucking do it so differently, you know.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, because I would be compiling drawings, you know. I would have had, like, a portfolio. I would have had, like, something to show, you know. Not a couple of punk flyers and my jacket, you know. My jacket, yeah, I'd be like, oh, I made this jacket. It was cool, but, you know.
Yeah, no, I love it.
You know. So, yeah, so Lyle agreed to sell me a machine. And Lyle, you know, like, remembers this shit. Like, the last time I saw him, he would tell me the story. Like, he remembered everything.
He remembers everything. It's incredible. We
Yeah.
talked to him about 3 months before he passed. He knew every little fucking detail about like, oh yeah, 1948, so and so had the shop in Oakland on blah 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 street, but then he moved over here, and you're like, what the fuck? How can you? How?
And that's like that because then you think, okay, well that's like significant history.
Yeah.
But like from my perspective, like he remembered when I walked in the door.
No, I know.
Which is like not significant history for him, you know what I mean, or for anybody really. But me it was, you know, me it is.
Absolutely.
But you know, yeah. So he agreed to sell me a machine, and then he changed his mind. Then he agreed again. Then he changed his mind again, and then it was like, you know, then it was just the no. You know, and there was no apprenticeship, and so then I was still hanging out in San Francisco. I mean, it wasn't my number. I wasn't like living to be an apprentice or a tattoo artist. You know, if I could change my timeline, I might have done it differently, and I would have gotten an apprenticeship somewhere and done it. You know what I mean? So I went to LA, and I got into stuff there, and you know, I had girlfriends and you know all that stuff. You know, got into some friends, some group of people. And then I went, and then they were getting tattooed by Bob Roberts and Mark Mahoney, like those two guys. So I got tattooed by Bob Roberts and Mark Mahoney. I mean, they were there. They didn't seem like as special as they are to me now, and they weren't then. Sure. Bob was like cool as fuck. You know, he was grumpy, but in a cool as fuck kind of way. You know what I mean? Like he totally was like the shit. You know what I mean? Like he had a mohawk, and he was like. You know, he was so fucking badass, you know? And then that was like, okay, well, I want to be like him. Yeah, for sure. That was like, you know, clear as day. Like, I knew about Ed Hardy, I knew about all the fancy stuff, but then Bob was like, whoa, you know, this shit is fucking cool. Like, he really, you know, puts it down. And then I tried to get an apprenticeship with him, but there was no way, you know? I didn't show anything, you know? So it was just like, you know, yeah, it's not, you know, go back in time, I would have had him begging, you know? I would have had him begging for me to come in there and fucking, you know, just study up a storm. You know, I wouldn't have taken what he got and opened a shop a couple blocks from him, that's for sure.
Can you tell me about how you came to meet Paul Rodgers and visit him?
Paul Rodgers, I was Leo Zulueta. You know, I mean, there's another story there. I mean, I could go all the way into Leo because, you know, this is like the king of men, you know. And Leo Zulueta gave me Paul Rodgers' phone number. I knew who Paul Rodgers was, and I asked Leo about him because, you know, Leo had Paul Rodgers machines and stuff, and I asked him, how do I get them? And, you know, I could have asked, I talked to Phip Buchanan about Paul Rodgers, too. And I never asked Phip, you know, for whatever reason. I never asked him how to get in touch with him, and I could have, you know. But Leo, it was different. Maybe Leo was like, you should call him. You know, just call him. He was like, you just call him. He's, you know, a really nice dude. He'll, you know, talk to him. And I was like, okay. And so I had that number in my wallet for a while, you know. And I was living in Colorado at the time. I went to Colorado, and I was living there, and I picked the number out of my wallet, and I was like, I'm going to just call him right now. Just out of the blue. And I called him and talked to him, and I was like, I want to get machines from you, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, well, do you want to just get machines from me, or do you want to come make them with me? And I was like, well, is that possible? And he was like, yeah, that's possible. I live alone, you know, I'm like, you know, just here, you know. And I was like, okay, I'll be there on Monday. And then I bought a ticket, and I flew out to Florida for a week. I was going to go for 5 days to Jacksonville. And the 5 days were over, and I was just totally in love with Paul Rodgers. And I just dropped my ticket in the garbage and was like, well, I'm going to stay until you don't want, you know, until I have to go. Basically, I'm going to stay another week. And he was like, cool. And then it was another week and another week and another week. And it went on for like 3.5 months. And then I had to go because it was like I was starting to be a little old man or something. You know what I mean? Like I needed to get laid. I needed to get, you know, I don't know. You know, I needed a tattoo too. You know, like I was tattooing a tiny bit at the inksmith shop, but like barely at all. You know, like our day was we get up in the morning. eat some breakfast, go for a bike ride, go in the machine shop, work all the way up till 2 o'clock, nonstop, and then go to Quincy's, have all you can eat food, and then drive around and look at people. And Paul was like fucking hilarious, so we just like drive around and like whistle at girls or whatever, and then we go to the inksmith shop, and then if there was a tattoo for me to do right then and there, I would do it, and then we'd say hi, and then we would leave, and then we would go home, and then we'd work in the shop again for a little bit, finish up whatever we didn't get done, and then we'd eat a little something, and Paul would write letters, and I would organize his stuff while he was writing letters. I got really into organizing his letters. Like, I don't know, it was like fun for me or something, you know, like that's what I did, like, you know, and I would look through, because I got to read them all, you know what I mean, and look through them all, and everyone sent pictures and drawings, and I saw Philip Liu's work, and I saw the Felix Liu's work. I read all the letters, you know, and they were, you know, piles of them, and they were just all stuffed in boxes. So I organized them all, and I did a lot of work.
Pretty special, man.
It was sick. It was the best. Yeah, it was the best. And then Paul would tell me stories afterwards. So after I did all this and he was done writing his letters, he would tell me stories. It was like, you know, it was my grandpa kind of, you know, he would tell me stories, and then we would go to bed. Yeah. And there was no TV or, you know what I mean? So it was every single day, just like one Groundhog Day. Yeah, it was amazing.
So aside from him teaching you how to make a tattoo machine, what are some of the things
you can't really teach me how to make a tattoo machine, because, you know, like, it's just like teach me how to draw. It's like, you know, I can just do what I can do, and unfortunately, like, that's just where I'm at. Like, you know, like, yeah, I mean, I worked for Ed Hardy, you know, and I did a set of Flash with Ed Hardy, and I didn't fucking, yeah, I mean, I wish I could say that, like, I learned this and that from him, and I'm sure I did. I got a lot on osmosis from just everybody.
Right.
But I feel like I'm always struggling. I never have a plan. You know, I always, you know, I can draw a lot of different things, a lot of different ways, but there's never like any consistent edge to it. So it's like, you know, it's just like one of those things, you know. It's not my strong suit.
But maybe that's what makes it so powerful, because
maybe
I mean,
if you say so, then
I think that, I mean, I think I speak for the majority of the tattoo community when to say that your work has been so influential and strong and just groundbreaking. I mean, there's so many aspects of it that are so interesting. The way that you blended so many different genres of tattooing, you know, like the boundaries dissolve page in the tattoo time. Like, you know, you've got the Borneo skull, and you got Japanese water, and you have the Polynesian tribal, and you got a Japanese snake. It's just like so much stuff,
right.
And you made it work in a way that no one else could have at the time, I don't think. I mean, Ed is probably the only person that you had as a peer for the most part, from my point of view, at that particular moment of time of pushing that kind of stuff. So I what I'm saying is, I think that, you know, you saying that you don't have a plan and you have trouble kind of like laying something out in a way that you're gonna, I don't know, push in a different new way or whatever. I mean, maybe that's your own superpower, to be able to just like not have the plan. Maybe that, I mean, I would feel that I was pretty talented if I were to come in with not a big plan and still be able to execute like you were. That's pretty fucking remarkable.
Right. Well, thank you. I mean, it's just like, you know, you never know what you're gonna get. That's all. But you know what I mean? Like, you know, there's that. You know what I mean? Sometimes it could be like over the top, and you know, and then sometimes I'll lay out like 10 different plans. I mean, I do that fucking regularly. You know, like 3 drawings is like almost every single time. You know, they might be loose, and
sure,
but yeah, the 3 drawings is almost every single time. I mean, I've self-critiqued myself, so you know, I've never worked with people, you know, besides Ed Hardy, who, you know, did on occasion, you know, I mean, he wasn't there and he wasn't really tattooing a lot when I worked there. So, but on occasion when he did, you know, he would just, you know, fucking critique the shit out of me, and then I would just bump, you know, my answer to that was to crumple it up and throw it in the trash and start over again. You know what I mean? So, but you know what I mean? Like, that's like, you know, it was an incredible, you know, opportunity for sure. but that's pretty much what it did. So, after a few years, I was like, not really anxious for him to do it, because it was always like, I have a timeline here, I'm at work. I get that I could be better, and I get that it could be different and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's the hard thing to reconcile sometimes.
Yeah, it's really hard,
You're like, oh, I drew this all night, and then you're there, and you were like, feel good about it, you worked on it, you thought about it, and then you get there, and you're like, you should just redraw that. You're like, fuck, man, like...
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah.
If we start going down that road too often, it's like, I'm only doing 1 tattoo a week.
Pretty much, yeah. Which is like COVID time, Hey, you can get your 10 drawings done now, man, Yeah, I feel like our little threesome that we had at Tattoo City at the time that we worked together with me, Freddy, and Dan Higgs, Freddy, Corbin, Dan Higgs. Yeah, it was I feel like Ed was kind of a handler. Like he was trying, he was kind of like, he was definitely getting stuff from us too, So there was definitely that. There was definitely that. And his career was kind of like over, really, I don't know to say that, but as a tattooer, he was already kind of done with it, really, like before. Seemed like he did it because he had a hand in. He's so skilled, and it's great cash. I don't know. I don't want to take his inventory. I don't really know. He never told me that. So
sure.
But seems like
he got energized by the shop.
Yeah, definitely.
And how could he not? How could anybody not get energized by being around you three at that time? You guys are young, you're hungry, you're pushing, you're experimental. The early 90s, you're like, everything's possible.
Yeah.
Right? Is that kind of...
Yeah, and then Dan's stuff really did transform, in that time from, like, this, like, kind of cartoon. He was super influenced by Irons, too, I felt like, in the beginning.
Really?
I felt like it, yeah. I don't know if you knew it, but I felt like it. Yeah, his stuff was way different. And when I first met Dan, he just did black work. Just tribal and, like, bonjis and stuff like that. So that's how he was when I met him. That's all he had, And, after I met Dan, then, like, the next time I saw him, he was covered in traditional tattoos. Like, I did his first traditional tattoo. And it was like a Sailor Jerry pinup on the side of his forearm. It was the Hellbomb girl. Mm-hmm. And I did it in psychedelic colors. I did it not traditionally. I did it, like, with, like, red, green, and yellow, and, like, a black pattern going over it. It was, like, totally psychedelic. And he didn't ask for that. That's just what he got. You know what I mean?
Really?
Like, yeah. It was a trade for dishes. He did the dishes at our house for a week, and that's what he got. And I lived in Baltimore, and there was a lot of drinking involved at that time, and it was, But and he got a few tattoos in that period, and the next time I saw him, he was covered in traditional tattoos. Like he had he was covered. He had back piece, front piece, everything.
Right. Had their lotus and.
Yeah, the lotus was there. Yeah, everything. I think he was getting tattooed like every week or something for like a while, or maybe more than every week, because like by other people and stuff. Yeah. I don't know where we're going from there. I forgot.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just curious about how they influenced you, and in what other takeaways besides just the visual aspect, but what other kind of aspects did anybody make an impression on you that changed, like how you go about your work, or how you look at what you want to do or what you don't want to do anymore? Well,
I used to think that Bob Roberts was just a huge influence on me. Just from getting tattooed by him, I carried on my own ideas of what he was, who he was, all that stuff. I made up a whole thing about Bob Roberts, but he wrapped his paper towel around his finger in a certain way, and like that's it. Like I made that into an art form, you know what I mean? Like, and who knows, that might have been just something he did at that moment, you know what I mean? But since I only had those couple of moments with him, really, I created a whole thing of how he approaches stuff, all that stuff,
Okay, and you adopted a lot of that.
None of it is real, though. None of it was actually based on anything other than like a fantasy. So
that's cool.
So yeah, Greg Iron's the same. Greg, I'm so lucky I got to meet Greg, and I got to meet him as a kid where he was like so cool to me, He's just such a sweetheart of a guy. And Paul Rodgers just completely the guy was a fucking salt of the earth, He was just a beautiful person you know, happened to pick up tattooing because he liked tattoos, and he was like, I could do that. You know what I mean? Like that's cool. Like I could do that and travel, and you know, I can do my other thing, and maybe I'll make a living at it. But you know, I mean, if Greg didn't do the tattoos, he probably would still be alive. You know, and he'd probably be rich as fuck and like happy as fuck and doing these doing crazy paintings like next door to Robert Williams or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, he wouldn't have been sitting in a tattoo shop. Like, you know, he could have done anything. He was like a fucking elite artist, you know?
Right. Totally.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You know, tattooed for like a couple of years.
Right.
Just got hooked up, you know. He was with Ed Hardy, he had Paul Rodgers. You know, he had all these, everyone, you know, he was lucky. Like me. I mean, you know,
yeah.
You know.
Tell us a little bit about your relationship with Freddy.
Freddie. I mean, Freddie's like my, you know, it's like a brother of another. It's like, you know, it's like Dan. I met Freddie after I knew Dan. So I already, or actually I met Freddie, I might have met Freddie before, actually. We met. He was apprenticing with Erno, and I came to get tattooed, to get this tattoo worked on that I had gotten started when I was in a different life. And Erno would talk about me, like, you know, how I was before my life as a tattoo artist. A little bit, and so Freddie kind of had like some sort of notion about that, and he's enlightened me about, like, you know, what was said about that period and stuff, you know. But Freddie was like a goth dude, you know. When I met him, I didn't think anything of Freddie really, you know. He was cool. I thought he was lucky, like, you know what I mean, that he got in, like he was like apprentice and he was doing it.
Yeah, he even said that as much. He's like, I got totally lucky because.
Yeah.
Dan went back to Baltimore and he was like, "This is my."
Oh no, that's with Ed. That was with Ed though, right?
No, with Erno.
That was with Erno. Oh, okay.
Yeah, with Erno.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you go.
I think that kind of opened up some of that for him.
Yeah, and then I met him in '80. Yeah, it was. I thought I met him. It was in the '80s for sure. So I mean, you know, it was. I met him. I met him when I went to get tattooed by Erno. Yeah, he was working on this piece on me for like a million years, and I went there and I got tattooed and I left, and then I came back and I met him again, but we weren't like friends or nothing. I mean, I wouldn't even remembered him except for the fact that he was like a kind of a goth kid, you know, and worked in the tattoo shop. And then I met him when I went to work at Realistic, and I stayed with him. And then, then I fell in love with Freddy. Yeah, of course. I totally fell in love with Freddy. It was fucking awesome. And we had that. So, you know what I mean? His work was sick. He had his own thing. I seen him from the get-go, so I knew his, like, beginning. You know what I mean? Even though, like, I didn't know him, I pulled it all in. You know what I mean? Like, I have a pretty absorbent eye, you know? And I saw it already evolving, and then I liked his Jesus thing, and I liked his kit, his thing and his shtick, and he was super fun and sexy. Like, you know, he has great, just a great personality.
Yeah.
And we became friends. And then, that was it. From there, it was like, you know, I didn't have friends in the tattoo world. You know, I was with my partner, my ex-partner, who was a tattoo artist. And but I didn't really have any. I had some people I had worked with before and stuff that were friends, but they weren't like. It didn't feel like they were peers, you know. They weren't like, you know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know. It was just different, you know.
Okay.
It was just a different energy. And then also at that point, you know, I was already tight with Dan, so at the point of going to Realistic, and staying with Freddie, now me and Freddie both have a tight friendship with Dan.
Right.
So there was that too, you know.
Right.
And. And then we hit it off and would just, you know, hang out all the time, talk all the time when I, you know, went back home. And then the idea was that we'd open up a shop when Realistic closed.
Right.
And when Realistic closed, we would open up a shop. Unless Ed wanted to open up a shop, then we would just work for Ed. And both of us just wanted that. Neither one of us wanted to open up a shop. There was no doubt about that. Neither one of us felt like there was a need for that. That's just a money play. And neither one of us gave a fuck about that. You know what I mean? Like, we were totally had everything we needed. Tattooing was awesome. Do you know what I mean? Like, so then that's how we got the shop with Ed.
Right.
So, you know, the lease was over. Ed asked Freddy what he was going to do, and Freddy said, well, me and Eddy have been talking about opening up a shop, unless you want to do something. And then Ed was like, well, let me think about it. And then the next day he found a location. He already had it all figured out. He had like the plan, and it was on, you know? So that was it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. And Freddy Negretti was supposed to work with us.
Really?
Yeah, because I was kind of tight with Freddy Negretti too, a little bit, like just over the phone, and I had tattooed him, and also Ed had told him about me and was like really hyping me out to Freddy Negretti before Freddy started tattooing again. Mm-hmm. So Freddy wasn't
like
tattooing.
After he got out of the pen?
I don't know what his deal was. I thought he was doing like print work or something.
Okay.
He had a family. It was like really deeply in religion, and he had a new family with a bunch of kids, and yeah, and he hyped me out to Freddy. So when I came to LA and I hung out with him, you know, I mean, and Freddy came to San Diego on a work trip I made in the '80s, and he went to the house of Phip Buchanan when I tattooed Phip's ribs, which is like a huge thing for me because there's like every tattooer in San Diego that I liked and respected basically came to the house to watch me tattoo him because of whatever mystique had already occurred of whatever capabilities people thought I had.
Yeah, but you were doing the hell scene on his side?
No, this was a dragon in water.
Okay. But the other side is that, correct?
Yeah, the other side is that, but that was later.
Okay, it was later.
This is a dragon in water.
Is it the one that I've seen before?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Is it the super loose one?
There's a loose bottom and then there's a tight top. So
yeah, it's super loose and it only has like maybe one claw.
Something. I don't remember the bottom.
Okay.
But I just remember the top. It was like, you know, it's like a it's very coily and scaly. And
okay.
It's all red and, you know, it was a big piece.
It's like a burgundy colored dragon.
Yeah.
I know that one. I love that thing.
With the waves. Thank you.
Yeah,
I did it in one sitting on the couch at the house with Freddy Negretti standing over me like this close. Like there's like a picture of me tattooing him on the couch with Freddy Negretti like standing there like this. And he's like a hero of mine who I only seen 2 tattoos he ever did. But I love those tattoos. I love them. And I thought that they were like so indicative of like a mind that I wanted. So, you know what I mean? Like that he's entrenched in the street and the world that I knew and was definitely a part of. And he was creative and stepping out of his boundaries and out of like what people could imagine. Yeah, I mean, you know, there's another one. You could just talk about that for so long, you know what I mean? Like I got so much out of knowing him, and I got so much out of him looking at me like that. Like just, it's like a woman, you know, I mean, I don't want to compare Freddy Negretti to a woman at all. That's not what I mean. But like when a woman looks at you in a certain way, you can become more than you actually are. You know what I mean? Like I always say that about my partner, you know, my wife is, you know, she makes me more than I actually am just because she believes it. And it's like, you know, she has such a deep belief in it that, you know, that it's real. And, you know, you could say that about my ex too, you know, like that was really in the tattoo world.
Sure.
You know, like I met her, I was pretty brief, and she was like that with me, and then everyone else looked at me that way. Yeah, it was pretty wild.
A transformative kind of energy belief.
It's true. It's like reality is only what we share. If everyone in this room, you know, shares the same reality, you know, belief, understanding, then, you know, it's true. So, you know, I mean, it's the more the merrier. You know, you get a football field full of people, you know, I mean, it just starts becoming more and more real. You know, it's like an agreement. You know, scary shit, man. Fucking, you know, if you think about it with like other ways, but yeah, we're just talking about tattooing. So realistic. Yeah, realistic. I got to work there one time. Unfortunately, it was right after Bill left, and that was unfortunate. I did get to go to the Diamond Club across the street before it was like really built out.
Okay.
Yeah, because he had just left, and yeah, he was, you know, having some issues, you know, at the time, and you know, meeting Bill Salmon, you know, was amazing because Bill Salmon, you know, I mean, you know, he's just a visionary, and like, you know, as far as a customer, become tattooer, you know what I mean? Like, you know, I could really relate to Bill's like love for tattoos and like vicarious thrills and stuff like that. You know, I mean, that's, you know, where Bill comes from. And then his, you know, his edge and his approach comes from a different avenue than mine. And, you know, I love his, you know, he came from love and like, you know, the grateful, you know, the best part of a hippie, you know, I don't, you know, mean that disrespectfully at all. You know, he came from the best part of what it was to be a hippie. There was not, you know, everything about Bill was genuine, which is like, you know, how many people in your life do you meet like that? You know what I mean? And just the love that guy had, you know. I'm so awkward and like loner-ish, you know. I didn't spend a lot of time with Bill, but whenever I did, I was completely present, you know what I mean? And I'm not always completely present with everybody, you know, but I always was with Bill Salmon for whatever reason. So to me, that's my evidence, you know, that he was someone really special because he brought that out of me, you know, so I can notice that more, you know.
That's cool.
Because I'm always there, you know. Yeah. Yeah, and Junie, you know, I mean, Junie was like the idea of what a loving woman is, you know. Fuck Junie though, man, you fucked me up because then, you know, you don't have, you know, there isn't that. The storybook thing is not real for most people. So Bill got that because Bill gave that, and that makes perfect sense. And, you know, and inspired that in a person that, you know, obviously had that in her all along anyway. Otherwise she wouldn't have been attracted to it. So, you know, it's like, yeah, forever looking for my Junie.
Pretty magical. Pretty magical stuff.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, for sure. And when you're, you know, looking at a woman, you're looking for a woman with that quality, and it's like, you know, well, Junie has that quality, and Junie's Bill, so there you go. We have ours, you know.
Thanks.
Yeah.